Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Education Series produced by the Australian Fitness Academy. It's like progressive overload for your brain. I'm your host, Tom Rock, and in today's episode we're going to talk about TV, and did you know that watching TV can impact how much food you eat? And we won't spend the whole discussion on that, but it's an interesting concept that relates to two research articles that I've come across. So I'll put a link to those in the description so you can have a bit of a look at them. But they basically relate watching TV while we eat and the influence it has on our eating behaviour. So one of them showed that if we watch TV while we eat, we spend more time eating. They didn't look specifically at the amount of kilojoules, but they did show that watching TV while you eat can increase the amount of time that you are eating. So in all likelihood, if you're eating for longer, you're going to be eating more. So that can increase energy intake. The other study was a bit of a systematic review and sort of looked at a lot of different studies, but their sort of conclusion was that if you do watch TV while you eat, it can lead to increased food consumption at the next meal as well. So you sort of get this delayed effect by I'll eat it while I watch TV, and then the next meal, the subsequent meal after that, I end up eating more. So that's another effect of how TV can increase the amount of kilojoules or energy or food that we're taking in. And they look at this as a I guess trying to look at what we can do to reduce obesity in society and the different effects, what is affecting how much we eat. Because in general, obesity is going to come down to how many kilojoules we're intaking. If someone's obese, they've got a high amount of body fat which has been put on by eating in a kilojoule surplus. So they sort of finish the paper or the research by sort of saying there's still a lot more to do in order to understand sort of how the external factors affect diet or affect a person's nutrition intake. So it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach. So it's not always going to be working for everyone. It's sort of something to be taken with a grain of salt, I guess. But they look at sort of using future information to help develop effective interventions, I guess, to help reduce obesity within the population potentially. So I think it's an interesting study. Again, it's not going to apply to everyone, so it's not like everyone you shouldn't eat while watching TV. But it's shown there can be a link there potentially to how much you're eating. So definitely don't need to go out and tell every single client you're training that they're not allowed to eat while they watch TV, because it's going to increase the amount of kilojoules they intake. Probably not how I'd say it's going to work or should work, but it's an interesting link, I think, and it's probably not the first step in getting a client to improve their nutritional intake and guide them on eating less. We want to create good habits, yes, but we don't want to completely overhaul their lifestyle because we want them to enjoy it and find what works for them. And I can guarantee you a lot of people that have successfully lost weight or successfully built muscle or successfully controlled their diet and are at a healthy weight are able to watch TV and eat at the same time. So it definitely doesn't apply to everyone, but I think it brings up a good concept about habits and understanding yourself, and people can apply this to themselves a little bit. But I've talked about habits in the past and how habits are a great way, or creating good habits is going to help you get to the outcomes you want. It's not generally about the little habits you do day in, day out to reach a certain goal or specific goal. And it's interesting to think about if there's any what are your sort of habits that maybe are leading to not necessarily negative things, but things that don't work towards your goal. So maybe you do watch TV, and while you're watching TV, you are more likely to eat more, or it's something that you notice that every time you watching a movie, you also eat an ice cream or something like that. So you can relate sort of these things that maybe are not as productive towards your goal to work out how to better achieve your outcomes. So if you know that every time you watch a movie you have dessert, for example, you don't have to change that every single time, but being aware of it means you can understand your little triggers and what you sort of do that may be influencing how much you eat. It's not always an issue, but it can have effects. So I think while these studies sort of relate to watching TV and showing it a link to how much you're eating, people will have different links to different things within their different factors within their lifestyle, whether it's how much they eat, how much they exercise, how they feel. All these sorts of things are built on potentially habits and relationships between things that you're doing. So the more you can sort of reflect on your own practices, if you're looking to reach a goal, I think it's an important thing to do. We want to work out what we need to do to get to where we want to be, but we also need to work out, well, what maybe are we currently doing that is not helping us get towards our goal, and how can we minimize our chance of doing that? So if overeating is one of them, and this study is sort of saying that could be related to watching TV while we eat, think about your lifestyle, if that applies to you potentially. If a client is, it could be something that you keep in the back of your mind as you discuss healthy eating and things with clients, and mindful eating and all these sort of things as well. So, yeah, not a big episode today, but I think it was an interesting concept that I got from those articles about the different impact and interventions we can look at, and how external factors can affect things like diet, in terms of, well, what's going to help us reach our goal, and why, and different little things we can potentially implement to, without even having to think, reduce the amount of I eat or a person eats. So if this is something I've seen, and then someone goes, okay, I'm just going to mindful eat, I'm not going to have the TV on while I eat my food, and it's just something they can potentially try for a few weeks and see if that makes a difference, and how that affects their nutritional intake is an interesting thing. So, but it might just help you look or self-reflect and get clients self-reflecting on what habits they are doing normally. And I think being honest with yourself is important when you do things like this, but don't also be overly critical. Well, there's nothing wrong with eating food while watching TV, and that's important to understand as well. So that's probably a big takeaway as well, is just because this study says it's an influence doesn't mean that you need to go, okay, I can't watch TV while I eat. So yeah, don't just jump at studies and go, that's the key. It's probably not the key. It may, obviously, they've sort of shown a relationship there, but again, probably not the be all and end all. But I think it brings up an interesting conversation. Anyway, hope you enjoyed my thoughts on that, guys. If you have any questions on that or any thoughts, send an email to tom@afa.com.au. Or if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to discuss, send me an email as well. Definitely happy to hear from you guys and touch on anything that you have seen or that you think is currently interesting in the fitness or health industry. But other than that, guys, have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you all soon.